Putin's brutality and what he's doing and his troops are doing in Ukraine is just inhumane.
There's concerns over Russian airstrikes in the western part of Ukraine, just as President Joe Biden holds a high-stakes call with China's president about the invasion.
We're concerned that they're considering directly assisting Russia with military equipment.
A college athlete gone too soon. A Westminster native is one of 9 people killed in a crash in Texas. His pastor gives us a look into the life of a student who had his life cut short.
You'll be hard-pressed to find anything about him that isn't positive.
Plus, a push to stop changing the clocks. We're looking at the next steps to stay on daylight saving time and the chances it actually happens. President Joe Biden spoke to China's president today for nearly 2 hours about the situation in Ukraine. China's foreign ministry was the first to comment about that conversation, saying conflict and confrontation are not in the interests of anyone, and adding that China and the U.S. have a responsibility to work on peace. Thanks so much for joining us for Denver 7 News at 11. I'm Jason Grenauer. Now, the White House is trying to deter Beijing from providing Russia military or economic assistance. Today's call came at a critical time in the war. As Elizabeth Schulze reports, there's concerns Russia is expanding airstrikes across the country.
For the first time since the war in Ukraine began, Russian forces striking the western city of Lviv near the Polish border. Ukraine's Air Force says Russian missiles fired from the Black Sea destroyed an aircraft repair facility near the airport, injuring at least 1 person. With Russia's advance on Ukraine stalled by fierce Ukrainian resistance, a senior U.S. official warns Moscow will increasingly resort to using long-range missile systems launched from within Russia. Russia's foreign minister saying today any foreign supplies to Ukraine containing military equipment are legitimate targets.
Any cargo moving into Ukrainian territory, which we would believe is carrying weapons, would be a fair game.
Amid fears China could supply military equipment to Russia, President Biden holding a high-stakes call this morning with Chinese President Xi. A senior U.S. official tells ABC News Russian President Putin has tried to make direct appeals to China as he becomes more isolated and prone to anger.
Vladimir Putin has launched an unconscionable war against Ukraine.
In Mariupol, the search for survivors continues at a theater being used as a shelter for children that was targeted by Russian bombs. At least 130 people have been rescued, while hundreds remain missing. Among those killed in the relentless attacks across Ukraine, 68-year-old American citizen James Whitney Hill. Secretary of State Antony Blinken warns Russia could be setting the stage for a chemical weapons attack.
We believe that Moscow may be setting the stage to use a chemical weapon and then falsely blame Ukraine.
The UN Security Council is meeting today discussing the possibility that Russia could use chemical or biological weapons in Ukraine. Elizabeth Schulze, ABC News, Washington.
Congress is moving forward on suspending normal trade relations in Russia. It's in response to the country invading Ukraine. Now, the bill is now in the Senate after passing in the House yesterday. Russia currently has what's called a most favored nation status. That means the country gets lower tariffs and fewer barriers. The president called for that status to be revoked last week. Back here at home, a traffic alert at 11. 2 lanes of eastbound I-70 are closed at Wadsworth because of a stalled semi. This is a live look showing some of the backups there. Arvada police say the semi's cab buckled because it had too much beer inside. Air Tracker 7 flew over that scene this morning. People can use the shoulder to get from I-70 to I-76. Well, investigators say a 13-year-old was behind the wheel of a pickup truck that crashed into a van carrying a college golf team. Crash happened in Texas when the team was heading back from a tournament. 9 people were killed, including an athlete from Westminster. This is 22-year-old Jackson Zinn. Jackson graduated from Ralston Valley High School before attending the University of the Southwest in New Mexico. Denver 7 spoke to Jackson's pastor at Grace Church in Arvada. He says Jackson was a fun-loving guy who was involved in his church, sports, and teaching golf to children with special needs. He's also described as someone who lived a full life and left an impact on everyone he met.
He loved God and he loved people, and he did it with authenticity and with a genuine spirit of care and compassion. And I think that was evidenced in the fact that everybody he knew, Jackson didn't know a stranger.
Now, there is a memorial service to celebrate Jackson's life at Grace Church next weekend. Denver police say one person was killed in a shooting in the Montview neighborhood early this morning. Another victim, a teenager, is in the hospital. At this point, there's no word on any kind of arrest. Well, this latest shooting happened just as we're seeing new statistics about crime in Denver. We've recently seen two of the most violent and deadly years in state history. Denver police say there were 96 homicides in the city last year. In 2020, 95 people were murdered. Those are the highest numbers reported since 1981, when Denver saw 100 homicides. Well, in response, Denver and Aurora City leaders are taking initiative to try to make our streets safer. Council members, along with the Denver Broncos and a Colorado Springs nonprofit called Raw Tools, are teaming up for gun buyback events. The goal is to prevent guns from being stolen or used in violent crime. Officials say they've been hearing from young people that they need a safe and anonymous place to turn in guns.
Also, last year, Denver officers recovered more than 2,000 guns from individuals that should have never had them in the first place, including many of those who were underage.
Many of our own players have shared publicly stories of how gun violence has impacted their lives, and we're proud to support them and join in the effort to make our communities safer.
Now, there are 8 gun buyback events throughout the year. The first is at 10 tomorrow morning at Empower Field. It's a drive-through event, so you can stay in your car to drop off your gun. The gun has to be in the back seat or the trunk, and make sure it's unloaded. Now, Raw Tools also hosted a gun buyback event after the Boulder King Supers shooting. The organization recycled those guns into garden tools. A patrol car is parked outside the Boulder Police Department so people can pay their respects to Officer Eric Talley. Talley was killed during the King Supers shooting. Tuesday marks 1 year since that shooting. The police department says the aftermath of it still has an impact, and everyone is processing it in different ways.
One of the things that helps is to remember Eric and the sacrifice he's made, but also to remember who he was as a person, as a family member, as a husband, as a son, as a father, but also to remember the coworker that he was, the dedicated officer that he was, who sacrificed his life in the line of duty to keep this community safe.
People are invited to drop off signs, flowers, and other mementos through Tuesday night. A court hearing is happening right now in Boulder County about Marshall Fire debris removal. A group has been questioning how the county chose the contractor for that removal process, but they are no longer standing in the way of the county signing the contract with that company. Now, fire victims have less than 2 weeks to apply for disaster assistance. The deadline is Thursday, March 31st. Now, this is for people whose homes were damaged or destroyed and people displaced because of smoke or ash contamination. You can find a link to apply on Boulder County's website. Well, changing our clocks could become a thing of the past. The U.S. Senate passed a measure earlier this week that would make daylight saving time permanent. Joe St. George looks at the real chance of that actually happening.
I gotta be honest, I'm tired. I'm tired of doing political time change stories. Twice a year, political reporters like me show clock towers and play, wait for it, ticking clock sounds before playing a politician's soundbite on why it's time to stop springing forward or falling back. All of this clock video has become a bit cliche. But while I'm tired of telling this story, something actually happened this week that's making me pay attention.
We don't have to keep doing this stupidity anymore.
The United States Senate passed unanimously a bill to make daylight saving time permanent. It would get rid of the twice-a-year process of changing clocks. Currently, only Arizona and Hawaii stay on one time all year. The Senate voted this through on Tuesday. So where has the debate gone since then? Remember, for a bill to become law, not only does it have to pass the Senate, it must pass the House and then be signed by the president. And right now, there's a big question mark regarding whether this can pass in the House, and even more questions about whether the president will sign it. But there is some important perspective to this debate. On Christmas morning this year, if the country stayed in daylight saving time, the sun would rise in some places at a manageable hour. In San Diego and Las Vegas, it would rise around 7:50 local time, but it wouldn't rise until 8:50 in Salt Lake City. It wouldn't rise until 8:59 in Detroit. In Indianapolis, the sun wouldn't rise until 9:04. In fact, many American cities wouldn't see the sun until 8:15 or 8:45 during most of December and January. History also provides some unique perspective. President Richard Nixon actually made daylight saving time permanent back in the early 1970s, but it only took a few weeks of early morning accidents for Congress to recognize that they need to change the policy. It's time to recognize that we may have made a mistake, former U.S. Senator Dick Clark said in 1974 to a speech to Congress. He and his colleagues successfully repealed it a few months later. If this somehow becomes law over the course of the next few months, it wouldn't take effect until November 2023. So we all have a few more clock changes ahead. I'm Joe St. George reporting.
Joe's tired. He's just sitting down. We all are, Joe. So are Colorado lawmakers at the state capitol because they are also discussing changing the clocks. Two bills are going through the legislature pushing for an end of changing of the clocks. One would keep standard time, which we use in the winter. The other would keep daylight saving time. And we went 360 on daylight saving time earlier this week. You can send us your thoughts on the Denver 7 Facebook page, or you can email us 360@thedenverchannel.com. Families across Colorado are on spring break. Still ahead, why experts say it's an important time to reset, but also to bond. Plus, a Boulder County musician lost everything in the Marshall Fire. Denver 7 gives viewers for stepping in so he can play music again.